Velkommen tilbage med dem her på kanalen. I dag der skal vi se en video, der handler om Arsenal. Det var en sjov joke, hvis Arsenal ikke havde vundet deres 2 sidste fucking kampe. Så.
Jeg synes, det var sjovt.
Shut the fuck up.
Jeg udstråler humor lige nu.
Okay,
det er bare...
det er
wow. Jeg synes, det er godt, Krause. Jeg synes, jeg kan mærke sådan... Jeg skulle lige til at grine.
Jeg var også meget tæt på.
Jeg tager det. Det er det vigtigste. Men ja, vi skal faktisk reagere på et af de... Eller faktisk det værste Premier League-hold nogensinde. Så jeg har skudt Tibo Fodbold, link som altid til videoen nede i beskrivelsen. Vi har Matt med, vi har Tjek med, og selvfølgelig undertegnet Krause med. Let's go.
Come on.
Football is now just £1 per week. See the link in the description to sign up today.
Altså, I er 100% hundet.
Altså, det var Derby, eller hvad?
Yes, sir.
In 2007-2008, Derby County finished the season with 11 points, winning just one game.
Det er så skræmmende.
It was the lowest ever points tally in a Premier League season.
Og hvad vil du sige? Kan I huske sådan starten af sæsonen, hvor det gik så dårligt for Newcastle, og folk var sådan op på ting, hvis Newcastle sådan slår rekorden eller sådan noget?
Vandt de kun en ud af deres første 20 kampe?
Det var helt voldsomt.
Det var de første 14, havde de ikke vundet overhovedet. Altså det var helt absurd. Så ja, nu ligger de så med sådan nummer 12 eller sådan noget. Det er virkelig klæmet.
Jeg så en...
The campaign tainted the careers.
Jeg så en United-fan, der havde lagt op på Twitter, sådan et eller andet med, sådan, hvor han kiggede ud af vinduet og var sådan, Newcastle er kun 11 point bag os. Og de sådan, starter bare sæsonen ud med at være...
Det er insane at tænke
kun
på.
En, så, ja.
Holy fucking shit.
Det er også derfor, det er så vildt, at Derby var så dårlig. Altså.
Ja, præcis.
Ja, det er netop det, der skal en del til. Nå, ja.
Of almost everybody who took part, it even included a sex tape scandal at one point.
Stærkt.
But it began with an unlikely success and a rise conducted by one of the most divisive and polarising figures British football has known, the combustible manager Billy Davies. Davies arrived at Derby in 2006, tasked with taking the Championship club up into the Premier League within 3 years. The summer before he arrived, County had flirted with relegation to League One, finishing 20th.
Ooh.
Nevertheless, Davies would need just one season to win a startling promotion. It was way ahead of schedule, a happy accident that saw an ill-prepared, helpless side stumble into English football's top flight and ultimately into notoriety. Their failure wasn't a surprise. One British bookmaker offered to pay out on Derby's relegation as early as September. The same company also offered odds of 33-1 that they'd go through the entire year without winning a game. Now that didn't happen, but it very nearly did, and the warning signs of what was to come had been sounding quietly for some months. In February of 2007, Derby had actually been in first place and headed for automatic promotion. A late-season stumble, however, partly caused by an internal row over promotion bonuses, saw the club sink back towards the pack and settle for a place in the playoffs. They would of course emerge victorious, but after the game, on the pitch at Wembley, in what was really a moment of great personal triumph, the manager gave a strangely detached interview. He can be seen pumping his fists to the crowd as he describes what promotion means to the fans, and then he praises his players before his interviewer asks him about becoming a Premier League manager. His expression changes slightly, and his voice seems to crack. Well, we'll enjoy tonight, he said, before darting off screen. Later, Davies provided the context behind that interview, telling 442 magazine in 2017 that he'd heard prior to the playoff final that the club would be undergoing a change of ownership, as a result of which his position was under threat, regardless of whether promotion was achieved or not. But what is incontestably true, and what would so brutally expose Derby at the level above, was the hugely underwhelming transfer activity that followed their playoff win. Joining them in the Premier League were Sunderland, who had finished top of the Championship, and Birmingham, who'd been runners-up. In preparation, the Black Cats would spend heavily on Craig Gordon, Kenwyne Jones, Kieran Richardson and Michael Chopra. Birmingham weren't quite so ambitious, but they still spent over £26 million. Fabrice Muamba was signed from Arsenal, Frank Quadri from Fulham, and Gary O'Connor returned to the UK from Lokomotiv Moscow. They also made clever use of the loan market, giving Wilson Palacios his break in English football and striking a shrewd deal for young Mauro Zarate. Sunderland would still stop at 15th place and Birmingham would be relegated in 19th, but both gave themselves a fighting chance. Derby, by unflattering contrast, showed neither any ambition nor acumen in the market, and that was reflected in their finishing last by a staggering 24 points. We had an aging mid-table championship team, Davis told 442's Chris Flanagan in November 2017. I gave the board options for new signings and the board decided that they would pick the cheaper options. And that is certainly how it looks. Robert Earnshaw and Claude Davis were brought in, from Norwich and Sheffield United respectively. Journeyman goalscorer Kenny Miller moved back south from Celtic, and American midfielder Benny Feilhaber joined from Hamburg in the Bundesliga.
Jeg sværger, han har
It
spillet
left
i
Derby
Benny
still very
Feilhaber.
much dependent on their Football League spine, and as a result, badly outmatched. Before the end of September, they would lose 4-0 at Spurs, 5-0 at Arsenal, and 6-0 at Liverpool. In November, they would suffer the ignominy of losing 5-0 to West Ham at Pride Park, which was part of a 5-game run without a single point or even a goal. It was bleak. And for Billy Davis, it would get even worse. His information had been correct. The club was about to be sold. General Sports and Entertainment would eventually take control in January 2008, but by the previous October, the boardroom had already changed significantly. Former chairman Peter Gadsby had been replaced by Adam Pearson, who would be integral to that eventual sale, and who Davis believed was determined to replace him. The relationship was doomed, reaching the point of no return within a month. Following defeat to Chelsea at Pride Park and apparently believing his sacking to be imminent, Davis went public with his discontent at the post-game press conference. The team is not good enough for the Premier League, he said. That's no reflection or disrespect to the players. They know that. They're not good enough. To compete in this league and at this level, he continued, you need investment in players. We have to invest in the playing staff. I haven't spoken to the new chairman in 3 weeks because he's a busy man who does things differently to the ex-chairman, but it would be nice to meet up soon.
Oh my god.
And the reception to that was and remains mixed. To some, it was a legitimate grievance. To others, a diversionary tactic, deployed to disguise Davis's tactical limitations at the higher level. But whatever the case, he wouldn't have to wait long to hear from Pearson. Within 24 hours, Derby announced Davis's departure. And 2 days later, they unveiled Paul Jewell as his replacement. Jewell was a survival specialist who'd built his reputation with Bradford City, then at Wigan Athletic. On paper, he was a smart appointment, and according to conspiratorial Davis, he was the manager that Adam Pearson had always intended to replace him with. Now, Jewell strongly denies that, but it didn't take him long to realise that he'd made a mistake. I look back and realise I rushed into the job, he told the Yorkshire Post in 2019. That time damaged me. My stock was high, but Derby was a real struggle. True, Jewell inherited a group of players who had experienced the worst of Premier League life, but also a squad with a natural inferiority. Reflecting in 2018, centre-half Dean Leacock told the Daily Mail that he got a real anxiety just by looking at the fixture list at the beginning of the season. And Todd, the veteran defender, remembered that he could sense the fear among the players and that we were just there to make up the numbers that season. Jewell tried. His trolley dash in the January transfer window produced a disparate group of reinforcements. 9 players arrived, including Robbie Savage, Danny Mills, Laurent Robert, and Roy Carroll. But without any cause for encouragement. Derby were a hopeless case. The sum total of Jewell's reign was a further 5 draws, a humiliating FA Cup exit at home to Championship side Preston North End, and 3 more games in which they'd concede 6 times versus Chelsea, Arsenal, and in what was probably the lowest of many low points, Aston Villa. In late March of 2008, an old homemade sex tape that featured Jewell somehow found its way into the hands of a British tabloid. Less than a week later, having suffered as many lows as is likely possible in a Premier League season, Derby's relegation was confirmed, and with it, their unfortunate legend. Tifo is delighted to be able to offer full...
Ja, præcis. Det kunne være vildt sådan at se bare sådan en generel sådan linje over sæsonen til udvikling, hvor du bare kan se de andre hold sådan langsomt trække fra, og de er bare sådan, de får bare ikke nogen point. Det er sygt, mand. Kan I vide, hvem deres eneste sejr var over i?
Jeg sad jo præcis og tænkte det samme.
Jeg var også sådan, om de lige pludselig kommer til at sige sådan, her der fik de deres første sejr, men de kom bare aldrig med noget.
Skal vi se.
Men der var ikke rigtig... De vandt over Newcastle!
På hjemmebane?
Ja. 1-0. Det var faktisk den 17. september, det var sådan lige startede sæsonen næsten. Altså siden der, så var det bare...
Men hvornår du sagde december?
Nej, september.
Nej, september.
September. Oh, fuck, det var early, så jeez.
Det var sådan der 6. kamp, hold da kæft.
Jeg ser det kamp på sæsonen.
Så de havde faktisk lidt håb.
Også bare fordi deres stadion hedder Pride Park. Som betyder stolthed. Jeg ved ikke, hvor meget der var stolt af, men...
Ikke så meget
lige
stolt
noget
af det i hvert fald.
Nej, det er også noget League One.
Det er rigtigt, vi skider lidt mere på Derby, de er lidt lige blevet relegated igen. Men,
hårdt tid.
Det, selvfølgelig, vi beklager Derby-fans derude, der er ikke nogen af jer. Men det var faktisk rigtig nice.
Det var faktisk nice, det der.
Ja,
det kan godt
vi har reageret på mange tragedier den her uge, kan man sige. Der var endnu en her. Hey. Men lad os høre, om vi kunne tænke os at se flere af de her slags videoer. Den anderledes noget football heritage, som Mourinho vil sige. Og vi ses igen i morgen kl. 17 på kanalen. Peace out.